everyone. Today's talk is about visual testing. But first, let's start off with a little game of Who Done It.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
And action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Did you all happen to see any of the differences? Maybe the biggest one where the dead man got up and walked away? Probably not. And that's because we all suffer from what's called unintentional blindness. Unintentional blindness is where something new and unexpected enters your view and you miss it because you're so focused on something else. And this is especially true when we talk about testing our software, right? We're focused on whatever feature it is that we've written, and that's the one that we want to work, and we're missing everything that's going on around it. So how do we typically compensate for this? We automate the test. Because if we automate the test, we know that all of our steps will be recorded and all of our verifications will be verified, and we can guarantee that those things will happen every single time, right? But what about the unexpected things, right? Sorry to tell you, but when you automate your test, you're actually scripting in the unintentional blindness, and you miss other things that may be happening in your application, such as the look and feel, right? Using the traditional automation tools, when we automate those tests, it's looking in the DOM, and that's where it's interrogating to give us the answers to our questions. For example, is this text present on the screen? It looks in the DOM, the text is present, it tells us yes, the test passes. But what about if that text is the same color as the background and our users can't see it? What if it's bleeding off the edge of the page, right? What if it's covered by some other element and therefore our users can't read it or interact with it if it's a button or something? These are visual bugs. And when I talk about visual bugs and visual testing to solve for visual bugs, lots of times people will say, oh, that's interesting, and think of it as this nice to have. But let me tell you, visual bugs live in everyone's applications, big or small. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here is Cineworld. Cineworld is the second largest cinema chain on the planet. And they had a visual bug on the page that asks you if you want to store your credit card information. This looks a little funny. Ha ha, we can laugh about it, right? These labels aren't aligned with the buttons. But let me ask you another question. Would you store your credit card information on this page? I wouldn't. Why not? Well, just as Kim has alluded in this tweet, it looks like they haven't tested their application. And if you look at this, you think, oh boy, if they missed this, who knows what else they've missed. right? On the back end with my credit card. So no, of course not. I'm not going to store my credit card information on this screen. But I have a theory. I think they did test this. In fact, I think they automated the test for this. If they automated the test for this, then with querying the DOM, these labels are there, the radio buttons are there. It's not a problem to interact with them. But from a user perspective, this is really bad, right? You lose trust in the application. Here's another one, OpenTable. OpenTable is used to make restaurant reservations. I used to live in North Carolina a couple of years ago, and I went back to visit, and I wanted to catch up with some of my friends. So I went to make, a nice size reservation at one of my favorite barbecue places. North Carolina is known for barbecue. So the barbecue place was the Pit, and I was making a reservation for 7 people. They gave me some times to choose from, and I selected the 7 p.m. slot. When I selected this slot, a modal appeared. And it took me a minute to figure out, what am I supposed to do here? Because there's nothing in the center, right? And so as I got to looking around a bit, I noticed that over here in this corner, I can see a couple of select buttons, but this made me even more confused. What am I selecting? Why are there 2 of them? They're not aligned, and there's nothing here telling me what I'm selecting. So I did what any of you would do. I opened Chrome DevTools and I began to dig around the DOM to try to figure out what was going on. And when I did that, I realized that the labels actually were there. They were just as far away from the buttons as possible. So, me being who I am, I did complete my reservation and I got to have barbecue, but I couldn't help but think about the many, many customers that are not engineers, that have no idea what Chrome DevTools are. If they're not looking in the DOM to make a reservation on your application, no, they're closing this out. And if they're millennial like me, they surely aren't going to give you a phone call. They move on to another restaurant, right? So think about how much business was lost because of this visual bug. These aren't one-offs. This happens to your favorite tech companies as well, like Amazon. On their mobile view, someone not only wanted to buy something, they wanted to increase the quantity, meaning multiply the amount of money that they were wanting to spend, and they're faced with this visual bug. This is Facebook Marketplace specifically. So you go to the marketplace, you're trying to shop for something. Look at the text over here and how it's just kind of going down the side of the page and overlapping on the images. This is very hard to read. This doesn't make me want to spend money, right? But if I queried the DOM and asked if that text was present, it'd say, yep, it sure is. This is how this kind of stuff makes it to production. Instagram. This is one of my favorite ones because this is sponsored content, meaning someone paid Instagram for premium placement of their advertisement, and this is what they got instead. All of the text is jumbled on top of each other, right? Again, querying the DOM, is this text present? Is this text present? Is this text present? Yes, yes, yes. Ship it, right? Twitter, same thing. Overlapping text. Automated tests wouldn't be able to catch that. Google, even Google, my goodness. This one is not as bad as the others, but hey, it is a point of purchase. And so some highly paid Google engineer has to stop innovating new features to go and fix this. Fortunately, we don't have to live like this, people. Visual validation can be automated. So what is visual validation exactly, or visual testing? Visual testing is where when you write your very first test for a feature, the first time, and you verify that, yes, this looks exactly how I want it to look. At that moment, we can take a screenshot of your application. And then for every regression run, we run another screenshot, take another one, and compare the two. If there are any differences, your test fails. So this catches everything and it eliminates the unintentional blindness, right? But be careful. Visual testing is not something that's new. In fact, it's been around in the industry for a while, but the technique that many vendors were using was not ideal for testing, right? So the way that most of the visual testing solutions will compare the images is pixel to pixel. Well, that's extremely flaky. Let me show you. So here is Google. And let's say that very first screenshot is when our test is perfect, our application is perfect. And so that's the baseline screenshot. In the second screenshot, that's a regression run. We compare it and the regression test fails. Who can see why? Yep, that Google search button is bolded in the second one. Well, when your cursor is over that button, that's the hover effect, right? So this is an automated test, maybe running as part of CI or something like that. You really didn't have control over where the cursor was happened to have landed, and therefore now your deployment is blocked. Not what you want. Here's another one. Who can see why this one failed? Yep, because of that cursor behind the word bad. Cursor's blank, right? So if it happens to take the screenshot when the cursor is solid and then happens to take a regression screenshot when it's not, that can cause a failure as well. You don't want your deployments blocked for this and having to investigate why that happened, nor do you want to write automation code that tries to stop this sort of thing, right? Fortunately, Applitools has come out with a better approach to doing this using machine learning. So it mimics the human eye and brain and is able to highlight and detect only what matters in the test. So I have another game here. You all don't get to play because you let the dead man walk in the first game. But in this one, I ran this through pixel to pixel, and I ran it through Applitools machine learning algorithm to just see like what's the difference and how does it detect. And this is the one with the pixel to pixel. Notice everything is highlighted here, like every little white shift change. It's not meant for testing. Versus when I ran it through the Applitools algorithm, it highlighted the things that I would have highlighted as a human being, right? So, okay, let's add this to a test, an existing test. So here's our application and test, single page app, very simple. 8 of my favorite books on test automation. You enter some text into that field, and that will filter down the books, so the ones that have test in the title. All right. So here's the test to do this. This is written in Cypress with JavaScript, but Applitools has SDKs for all of the different automation tools and all of the different programming languages. So if you use something different, good for you. But this is JSConf, right? So okay, so this is Cypress, JavaScript. We are querying the word test. We are expecting these 5 books to come back. We enter that into the field, and then we have 2 validations here. One validates that the number of books that are visible is the same as what we expect, and each of those titles that's in the expected books array actually is visible. All right, great. So now I get a little wonky with the CSS and I want to add a bouncy effect, but I don't really know what I'm doing. But that's okay because I have tests, which means I can do whatever I want. So I add line 6 here to this CSS and I check it in, right? My test will let me know if anything's wrong. Again, here's my test. Look at it carefully. And this is what the application looks like with that new CSS. Will my test catch this? Let's see. I run this with Cypress again. Notice all the green here. There's no red, even though I have literally flipped my application upside down. That's a problem. That's why we need visual testing. So how do we add it? Very simple. 3 lines of code, almost like poetry, right? Starting on line 3, we use the Applitools Eyes API, and it integrates so nicely with Cypress. So look here, it becomes a side command. We say, open your eyes. We give it the name of our application. The next line, this is the magic. Check the window. This takes the screenshot. It sends it out to the Applitools cloud. Applitools stores all of your images on their cloud, so you don't have to worry about disk space or anything like that. Final line, Close your eyes. We're done here, folks. So we run this test, and now notice the test does fail because it detects, girl, you flipped your books upside down, right? And it highlights all of the differences there for me. Okay, so this is great for removing unintentional blindness, right? But we could even scope this down. What if we only wanted one book? For example, look at line 2. I'm just going to search for agile testing, knowing that there's only one book that comes back. And so I don't want to test the entire page because there could be a lot going on this page that I don't really care about, and I want to scope it down to the book. To scope it down, I use that same check window command, but I pass in a target, which saying I want to target a specific region, and I give it the CSS selector for that region. Okay, so that's the ID. And then notice the screenshot will only capture this one book. But when we scope it down like this, we have to be very careful because we could reintroduce the unintentional blindness. For example, let's say that this filter is broken. I enter the word test here and none of the books go away. Would our visual test pass or fail? If you said that it would pass, you are correct. Because remember, we only had a picture of that one book. We said, hey, look for that one book. Is it visually perfect? It sure is. It passes. So we have to still use our brain. Even though we're using machine learning in our testing, we are still in control. So I can mix and match my assertions. It doesn't have to be all visual. I can add that functional one back in, right? So look at line 3. I'm saying make sure that there's only one book visible. That's the functional assertion. And once that's the case, I can then say, now do the visual test. So that makes it really, really powerful. All right. I can also do dynamic content here. So you wouldn't think you could do dynamic, verified dynamic content with visual testing, but you can with Applitools, right? So this is a match level. There's several different match levels. So this makes it very verbose and flexible. But this layout is saying, I want you to use machine learning in a different way to just detect the layout of my page. So for example, this first screenshot, this is the books in one order. The second screenshot is the books in another order. Because I said to verify this using the layout algorithm, it's just going to detect the patterns on the page. Very popular for like news sites. When I used to work at Twitter, we use that match level for the tweets. We don't know what they're going to say, but we want to make sure that structurally the page is okay. Things aren't overlapping or bleeding off the edge, right? So even though those books are in different order, this still passes. And then the final thing I want to show you is the ability to run this across multiple platforms. So Applitools has this ultra fast grid that works beautifully with eyes. And what this does is allow you to run your test across any browser or device that you want to simultaneously. And the way that it does this is it grabs the state of your application and then blasts it across all of those devices. So you don't need the device form. You don't have to deal with that at all. You don't even have to change your test. You simply add starting on line 4, we have an array that basically says, here's what I want. I want Firefox, Chrome, and IE in these dimensions. I want iPhone 10 in landscape and portrait mode. I want Galaxy. And this all runs lightning fast simultaneously. Pretty neat. And so that's what that would look like on the grid. Notice here, bunch of tests run here, all the different devices. Very, very, very cool. Also works for components. So if you have Storybook for Angular, Vue, React, this can verify your components and make sure your date pickers, your fields, your buttons, everything remains visually perfect as the rest of your teams are going to use these things. All right. So there you have it. That is visual testing in a nutshell. What questions can I answer for you?